Test, test, okay. Live? Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to this public meeting regarding a RFP that the town has recently made live for the sale of 6 conforming buildable lots in the town of Nahant. Here joined, my name's Tony Barletta, I'm the town administrator. We're joined here tonight by Gene Canty, a Board of Selectmen member. I know Selectman member Thibault will be here shortly. Also, Sharon Everett from KP Law, our legal counsel, Wayne Wilson, building inspector, and Kristen Kent, our conservation agent. So if there's any questions that you might have at the end, hopefully we'll be able to answer that. We also have an email address set up. It's Nahant, it's kghsale@nahant.org. It's on the website, it's on the RFP, it's everywhere. So if you have any questions, email those in and we'll be able to answer them through that too. So I want to give a brief introduction to this property. In 2005, the town of Nahant acquired these 12 lots from the federal government for a price of $2 million. It was supported by a loan. And that loan, we've made interest payments over the last 20 years. We've made a few principal payments, and the remaining sum of $1.8 million is due on January 18th, 2025. So we are hoping to sell these lots in a quick manner so that we can make enough money through this sale to pay off that loan. Town meeting in May of 2021 voted to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell these lots in a particular manner. And I'll get into those details in a following slide. But to pull, unlike a typical real estate process, because these properties are being sold by a municipality, we're required to go through a procurement process dictated by Chapter 30B. So in order to participate in this process, you have to download the RFP from nahant.org/bids. It's also, there's a link right on the main page. You download that RFP and it gives you all the information about the process, how to submit a bid, when to submit a bid, where to submit a bid. I'll talk a little bit about that now, but want to make sure that everybody understands you must download the RFP and follow the directions of the RFP for us to be able to consider your proposal. A quick overview of the lots. These lots are situated on Castle Road, Gardner Road, and Goddard Drive. There's 12 lots here. This initial offering includes the odd lots, so lot number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. Phase 2 of the RFP process will include the remaining lots. We don't have a timeline on what that next phase will be. It was likely shortly after this. We might wait until after the calendar year. And there is 9 vacant lots currently. There's 3 remaining structures, one on lot number 2, one on lot number 8, one on lot number 12. Lot number 2 and 8 are now vacant, and the town is pursuing the effort of demolishing those and clearing the land just like we have the other 9. For those of you tuning in virtually or that aren't familiar with the town of Nahant and where this area is situated, you can see it outlined in red in this area. This entire corner of Nahant is considered Bass Point. Zooming in on this area, the property sits nicely in this first part of Bass Point, abutting the Johnson Elementary School. In between the school and this property is the Nahant Community Garden. Immediately behind the Coast Guard housing lots is Kelly Green's Golf Course, which is this area here. And to the left of that is Nahant Flash Road Park, which includes multiple ball fields, soccer fields, basketball court, tennis courts, playground. We also, to the right of this area, is Tri-Mountain Park and Bailey's Hill Park, which is open space, conservation land with many trails and historical structures. This is a drone footage of the current of the property now with those lots removed. You can see how close the golf course is in this area and Tri-Mountain Park. From the lots further down on Goddard Drive, you have views of the golf course, views of the ocean, and it carries on to some of the lots on Castle Road as well. On the other side of Tri-Mountain Park, which is right next to where these properties are, this is the other side. This is Tri-Mountain Fort Ruckman Park. This is a new park that the town just invested in over the last year or so. In that back corner over here was Bailey's Hill, and the Coast Guard lots are right over these trees. The bid submission dates, town meeting authorized the Board of Selectmen to sell these lots in 2 offerings of alternating lots over a 2-year period. This initial offering includes lots 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And the way that this bid or procurement process is structured is it's a staggered bid opening process. So you can see the dates here. The first bid due date is Tuesday, September 17th. A week later is the due date for lot number 3. A week later, lot number 5, and so on and so forth. The idea of this staggered bid opening process is that if we get multiple offers on lot number 1, obviously we can only award to one person. The folks who do not win that award have the ability to submit an offer on lot number 3, a week later. So you don't have to submit your bids for all of these lots at the same time. You submit a bid for lot number 1, and then a week later you submit a bid for lot number 3 if you're still interested, and so on and so forth. We also set minimum values or minimum bid prices for each lot, and they vary, as you can see. So the town went through an appraisal process, spoke with local realtors, builders, looked at the square footage of the lots, and tried to determine what those values should be set at based on a number of different characteristics. Lot number 1 is right about 10,000 square feet. As I mentioned earlier, all of these lots have the correct amount of frontage, correct amount of square footage, they're conforming, they're buildable. The town meeting article included a restriction to a 25% floor area ratio. Typically, our single-family zoning in an R2 would have a 45% floor area ratio. The town meeting included a 25%. So for a 10,000 square foot lot, you could build up to a 2,500 square foot habitable space. So the habitable space would not include a unfinished basement of less than 7 feet. It wouldn't include a garage. It wouldn't include an attic. So for the habitable space, it would be 2,500 square feet. Lot number 1 is exactly about 10,000 square feet. Lot number 3, as you can see, the minimum value is a little bit more, at 450,000, because it's a little bit bigger of a lot. I think it's around 11,000 square feet. I'll show you on the next, that information's on another slide. So you can actually build closer to just under 3,000 square feet on that lot. Lot number 5, I think I have, I'll switch over here. So I was just talking about lot number 1. Lot number 3 is the bigger lot, and this map is included in the RFP documents. Based on the 25% area ratio, you're at 2917 square feet for your structure on this property. Lot number 5 is closer to 10,000 square feet. It's also, on the corner of Castle Road and Gardner, a little bit of an awkward shape lot, so we brought that one, that minimum bid is equal to the same on lot number 1. And so we looked at all these different characteristics, what these different areas bring in value, and try to determine what that minimum value should be for each lot. So just going back, as you can see, it goes 425, then 450, 425, then 450. Lot number 9 is the most expensive minimum price at 500,000, because that's a larger lot on Goddard Drive, closer to the golf course. And lot number 11, also on Goddard Drive, is at 475. So on these dates, bids are due at 3 o'clock at the Board of Selectmen's office in the town hall. We can't accept any bid that comes in after 3 p.m., and they have to be submitted just as it's described in the RFP. So I believe the RFP says it needs to be in a sealed envelope, and on the top of the envelope you have to write the lot number and the address that you are submitting a proposal for. We did that just in case there was any confusion with the RFP process and somebody came in and submitted bids for, lot 3 or 5 or 7 when they only should be submitting a bid for lot number 1 at that time. So it's important you look at those details in the RFP and make sure that you submit it properly. At 3 o'clock, the door closes, no more bids accepted for lot number 1, and we'll be bringing those bids into this room where we will, with legal counsel, we will unseal the envelopes and read the bids out loud. We'll read the name of the bidder, and we'll read the value that they submitted in their proposal. Then, over the next 24 to 48 hours, with legal counsel, we'll be evaluating each of those proposals more in depth, because it's not just the highest bid, it's the highest and best value. For the town, as I mentioned, we are interested in proposals that can close in a quick manner. So how strong your financing is, that's going to be factored into what the highest and best value of your proposal is. So within that 24 to 48 hours, we'll decide what's the most advantageous offer for the town, and we'll notify the apparent awardee. Stepping back a second to the town meeting directive, as I mentioned earlier, none of these lots can be combined or subdivided with another lot. No single individual or entity shall be permitted to purchase more than one lot. And we have an affidavit in the RFP documents that proposers should sign saying that they are complying with that restriction. So if after the first lot we pick an award, we award some proposer lot number 1. When we're looking at the remaining lots, part of our evaluation process will be that restriction to make sure that the highest and best offer wasn't to someone who has already received an award for a previous lot. And then the maximum floor area ratio of the 25%. Again, so this setback map helps you determine, decide or think about what you could potentially develop on the property. So the green border here is the required setbacks dimensions for the yard. So the lighter yellow color is basically where you could build the potential structure. It also highlights the heritage trail that the town is retaining in this area and shows how the future Goddard Road is going to look with those boundaries as well. There's a line here that might be hard to see from where you're sitting, but this dotted line that cuts through the back corner of lot number 8, lot number 9, lot number 10, and lot number 12. This is the boundary for the local buffer zone for the Wetland Protection Act. So to keep it simple, lot number 9 is the only one during this initial phase that a future owner would have to go through a local permitting process with the Concom, depending on what their proposal is, potentially. All other lots are not affected by that. Also included is in the bid documents is a permitting, zoning, and utility information. So it talks about what the local zoning is that you should be thinking about, what the process is to file a building permit, what the time frame is typically for review of the building permit. It talks about our local stormwater bylaw, so any structure over 600 square feet goes through an administrative review process with the conservation agent during the building permit process to understand how the structure or the proposed structure affects stormwater flow and how that'll be accounted for. As I mentioned, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw, which is a local process, affects only the lots that overlaps. And we also provided utility information on all of these lots have water and sewer services that are currently in the front yard of each lot. There's natural gas on Castle Road and Gardner Road. None of these lots had natural gas before. They were previously heated through oil. But the future property owners would be able to request a connection to the natural gas main on Castle or Gardner Road. Even the lot number 11 might be able to connect where it's so close to Gardner Road, but there is not natural gas. There is not a natural gas main on Goddard Drive. So you'd have to think about electrical heat or oil heat or propane heat, different types of heating fuels to consider on those properties. And there's overhead electrical surrounding the entire property, so there's easy connection for electrical service. The future property owner would have to talk to National Grid for both electrical and gas connections, and then they would talk to the town for water and sewer, and then all these properties would also be serviced on trash. They'd be serviced with the town's local curbside collection with waste management. Accessory dwelling units is something, this information is not included in the RFP. It's come out recently. The legislature and the governor signed into law an Affordable Homes Act that includes language about accessory dwelling units. The new statute, we're still, as a town, reviewing that and trying to understand how, what the town's abilities to permit or regulate the new law. But it does go into effect in February of 2025. It does say that in a single-family zone, ADUs will be as of right. It says that towns are not allowed to prohibit non-owner occupied ADUs. So there's no no prohibition on that. And it does give the town the potential for regulation or prohibition for using ADUs for short-term rentals. The size of the ADUs are half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. So this would, if someone was considering doing an ADU, it would still fall within that 25% floor area ratio. If you're on a 10,000, for example, if you're on a 10,000 square foot lot and you were trying to build a 2,500 square foot structure and you were interested in including an ADU, the largest your ADU could be is 900 square feet, and the remaining 1,600 square feet would be the principal structure. So there's a lot of this that the town is still digesting. Some of it is pretty obvious in the law of what's going to be allowed, but we can't really speak to how the town is going to, what the town's going to consider regarding potential reasonable regulations surrounding ADUs at this time. So it's something that if you're thinking about it, you should look into the law and maybe seek some legal advice on how you could potentially consider that in a future development. It's an accessory, the question was what's an ADU? It's an accessory dwelling unit. Essentially another living unit. So it's like an apartment. It can be within the main structure, it can be a secondary structure. I'm cautious about, again, I'm still digesting the new law. The way I read it is that a municipality cannot restrict an ADU to be only a separate structure. So, go ahead.
Would these fall under low-income housing or subsidized housing?
No, the question was, does ADUs fall under low-income or subsidized housing? In the law that passed, this section of the law did not speak to affordable housing at all. So there's no restriction in the statute that they must be affordable. It's just strictly a zoning change. Could they be? A future property owner could, in order for it to be a legitimate subsidized housing unit, there would have to be a deed restriction that continues that affordable element in perpetuity. Given that there's one deed for the property, the entire, you couldn't just restrict the ADU to affordable. It would apply to the entire property. So theoretically, a future property owner could do that, but the law doesn't require it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, because there's a lot of speculation about what's happening in various towns about putting up subsidized housings and not a lot of restriction on those. So if somebody would take, it's buy a piece of land or property next door to subsidized housing. And that's the question, I guess, I'm trying to get answered.
The question, if I can try to restate the question, it's about concern over potential affordable ADU units or subsidized housing units at these properties. It's what it is. It really comes down to the future property owner and what they elect to do. It's not being pushed by the town. It's not something that the new law is pushing. I mean, even today, a house in Nahant could go up for sale. That's a single family lot, and someone could buy it and deed restrict it for affordable use. That's stuff that can happen today. So this doesn't change that element at all. What the ADU law, the new ADU law, doesn't talk about affordability at all. It's strictly allowing single-family zone structures to add an accessory dwelling unit by right. But it doesn't talk at all about affordability, it doesn't talk about subsidized, it doesn't push that. Yes, Lisa, would you mind speaking into the microphone? Oh, here we go. Just so I don't have to repeat the question.
Those ADUs, do the typical building requirements apply here, like setbacks and stuff like that?
Yeah, everything, zoning in general is going to apply to ADUs. It's not, you're not going to go outside of the normal zoning, other than that you're adding a unit to an existing single-family home. So it's, I would compare an ADU to like an in-law apartment, so to speak. Only an in-law apartment is obviously occupied by a relative, where an ADU can be occupied by anyone.
But you're talking about the ADU being contained within the main structure.
That's, well, and there's also options for that. There's ADUs that might be in addition to an existing structure, and there's also an ADU that might be an actual separate structure. But cumulatively, the floor area ratio would apply.
Okay. But where these lots are only 10,000 square feet-ish, and if someone wanted to do a separate building for an ADU, how would dimensional requirements apply there?
Exactly the same to everything. All the same setbacks would apply. You don't get an exemption to anything for an ADU other than the actual use of a single-family lot as essentially a multi-family lot. It's what it becomes.
So in reality, you couldn't put two buildings on one lot?
Well, you can do it, but you're still going to be restricted to the 2,500 feet. So you can't build a 2,500-foot main structure and then say, I want to build a second structure.
Right.
So you could build like the 900 feet is the maximum size of the ADUs. This is not, we're not talking about that's not a much of a house, 900 feet. It's a shed. So if you were going to make it separate, it would be a very small structure. So more than likely, it will be either in addition to or part of the initial structure.
So if it's in the back of the main house, how far back would it have to be set back from the house?
It could be attached. It doesn't have to be set back.
It doesn't have to.
The only restriction on multiple buildings on the same lot is there's supposed to be 10 feet between the buildings so that firemen can get in between two buildings and put a ladder up. That's the only restriction on the proximity of one building to another building.
So theoretically, if you were talking about a 10,000 square foot lot and you were looking at a 1,600 square foot structure and a 900 square foot structure as separate structures, you would have to still keep them situated within this yellow area. And as Wayne said, there'd be a 10-foot separation between the two buildings. So it would be pretty tight in this area to accomplish that in this area, but theoretically, it's permittable.
But you can't max out the total square footage. You can only max it out to what's 25%.
Right, you still are restricted to the 25% floor area ratio, which, as I said, if you look at this document, which is in the RFP, it's also on nahant.org/CGH sale. Each lot says the lot number, the square footage of the lot, the frontage, and then it gives you the 25% floor area ratio. So to keep it simple, I'm using lot number 1, which is 10,000 square feet. So your floor area ratio is 2,500 square feet, right? So, sorry, go ahead.
What does zoning allow in
In this area, it's, for height, it's 30 feet. And with a special permit through the ZBA, you could go to 35 feet.
Is that absorption of the accessory dwelling square footage to 900, does that get absorbed into the 25%? And is that a state mandate or town?
It does get absorbed into it, and that's going to be a local restriction through the deed. That's what town meeting authorized. So town meeting said the max floor area ratio of habitable space in this area on these lots is 25% of the square footage of the lot itself.
That was before this law was passed.
So within that, the ADU law allows you to build a separate, an accessory dwelling unit, but the accessory dwelling unit limits by the state law is a max square footage of 900 square feet or 50% of the principal structure, whichever is lower. So in most cases here, unless you're, if you're building the most you can in these properties, the largest your accessory dwelling unit's gonna be is 900 square feet. And the ADU law does not allow you to build more than 25% of the square footage of the lot size.
And again, that's local.
That's a deed restriction on the property. Castle Road construction plan. So when these property lines were put together, the property lines of the front of Castle Road and lot number 5 over by Gardner actually extend into the street currently. And there's a sidewalk that runs through the front yard of these properties. Now, this property has always been owned by the town, so it has never been an issue. Now that we're selling the lots, if we were to keep the sidewalk where it is and the road where it is, we would need to keep a public easement through these properties for that. What the town has decided to do is actually move the sidewalk outside of the property lines, move the curb of the street outside of the property line so that we don't need a public easement. And there's a number of different benefits by doing that. One, during construction for future property owners, there isn't any concern about people walking through a construction area, so we've actually already removed the existing sidewalk on this street. Two is shrinking the width of Castle Road is actually a traffic calming measure, and as I showed earlier, we're right next to the Johnson Elementary School. So slowing down traffic in this area is a benefit to vehicles and pedestrians. This intersection at Gardner Road can also be somewhat dangerous at times, so slowing traffic down will help drivers navigate through this intersection. This is a flush concrete stamped island. It's not a raised island. With crossing here, improving, actually putting ADA ramps on these crosswalks and putting them in spots where you have for pedestrians have better sight lines and drivers actually have better sight lines to see pedestrians who are potentially crossing. The topography of these lots, also the front yards here are probably about a foot or two above Castle Road. So an additional benefit of moving the sidewalk down is it will now be on a flat surface instead of currently kind of going with the topography of the property. The town wouldn't pursue construction on this until after utility connections are complete, because we don't want to build it and then have to dig it up to connect utilities. But we wanted to make sure that potential bidders, potential, future property owners understood that this is the direction of the town, and it's one less thing they have to worry about if they are considering purchasing these lots. Yes, Jim?
I'm not sure, one of the lots has a fire hydrant on it. Is that gonna be moved also, or is that gonna stay put within 7 feet of the line?
Thank you. The question was about a fire hydrant that currently sits right about here in the front corner of lot number 4. So in the RFP, we included information that the town would retain a temporary easement for the front edge here, for that, where that hydrant is, because the intent would be to move that hydrant out of that property and over to the public way. But again, we're going to do that after the fact. So we want to maintain, rights to access this area, but they're not permanent, it's not intended to be permanent rights. We're going to move everything out of the private property and into the public way. And this crossing is existing. So we kept the sidewalk from here to this corner so that any, pedestrians who are walking in this direction today, they can walk to here and then cross and use this sidewalk. And we added a new crossing over here, during construction. So part of that language in the RFP talks about retaining some of the, temporary property rights in this area through easement, so that we can transition to this final product. Yes? No, you can still turn left. The issue with this intersection, this redesign, essentially, if you're driving in this direction towards Bass Point, you would pull to here and then take a left. This area of the intersection is where there's been some close calls with people exiting Gardner Road, taking a left onto Castle, and people coming from Castle taking a left onto Gardner. They pretty much meet right in that spot. So the idea would be to have people kind of take a 90-degree left turn instead of bending the curve. But we did want to keep that as a flat island because of larger vehicles like fire trucks, DPW equipment, to have the ability to get in there for their normal business. Today, so if you downloaded the RFP prior to today, you're going to want to go back online and download it again because today we issued an addendum with additional information. Again, if you just go on to nahant.org/bids, fill out the information again, you'll get a new download and it'll have all the new information in it. If you previously downloaded it, we sent an email out with this information today. Periodically throughout this process, as we get questions, we are recording those questions, recording the answers, and we will issue an addendum with those questions provided to all people who downloaded the RFP. That's a procurement law requirement that we give everybody who's interested the same amount of information. So if anyone asks a question, we record it, we record the answer, and then we publish it for anybody who's interested to have that same info. So that's the first part of the addendum. The second part is this FAA determination of no hazard. So this property had an odd element in the deed that actually stated prior to construction, you would need written determination from the FAA that there's no aeronautical hazard. So the town filed with the FAA 12 aeronautical studies, and we've received 11 of them back. They've all come back with no hazard determination. And the lot number 1 is still in progress, but we assume it's going to come back with the same determination because it's actually lower in elevation anyways. So it was important for us to pursue that and provide that to prospective bidders because it could come into play when you're seeking title insurance. So that should solve any potential issue with that. And then the town also pursued an environmental phase 1 site analysis, which we completed today, and we uploaded that document into the RFP as well. If you scroll through the environmental site analysis and get to the summary of it, it says that there's no finding of any harmful environmental product or anything like that in the site. That it's a clean site, clean soil. But it's a 500-page document, so I wanted to summarize it for you. Other important dates to keep in mind. So as I mentioned, on all those submission dates, which are every Tuesday for 6 weeks in a row, we'll be notifying the successful proposer within 48 hours. From that point, there's an expectation that a purchase and sale agreement be signed within 7 days. And then 30 days from that, we would close on the sale. Again, all that is listed in the RFP. And then next week, starting next week, Tuesday, August 27th from 11 to 1, Thursday, the 29th from 11 to 1, and the following week, Wednesday, the 4th from 11 to 1, I'll be out there if anyone wants to do a site visit, a tour of the properties. The properties, if you haven't been out there recently, I think on Tuesday, the property lines were staked out with pink markers. There's also that setback plan is there as well, so you can actually go out there and see where those property lines are. And then lastly, just repeating that there's a ton of information on nahant.org/cghsale. But again, to participate in this process, you have to download the RFP. So go to nahant.org/bids. And then if you have any questions, submit them to cghsale@nahant.org. And then bids must be received here in the town hall at 3 o'clock on those special dates. And make sure that you follow the directions of how that bid should be submitted.
Can the time frame for any of this be accelerated?
It's a pretty fast track as it is. The dates that are listed in the RFP are set. That being said, there's nothing that prevents a purchase and sale or a closing to occur faster than those dates listed. But we wanted to give enough time, but to stay on an aggressive schedule. So it's a max of 7 days. It's a max of 30 days. It can go faster than that.
These sales are open to developers and private people, right?
Yes.
So you anticipate a lot of developers?
So the question is, are these properties for sale to developers or private citizens? And the answer is yes. There is no restriction on who can participate in the bid process other than you can't buy more than one lot. So a developer, I don't know enough about the economics of that business, but one would assume, for it to really work out for a developer, they'd need to be able to buy more than one lot. So that restriction was put in place by town meeting with the intention of limiting, a large development. So, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm hesitant to put any guesses on what we end up seeing. But we put a lot of thought into the minimum values based on the appraisal, based on comps, based on talking to real estate brokers, talking to potential builders, looking at what the range of construction costs are per square foot. And that's how we ended up where we are with the minimum bids. So, is it possible? Yes. Is it advantageous for a developer? I don't know. But, and there's no restriction. So the way that the language in the article is written is no single individual or entity shall be permitted to purchase more than one lot. We talked about this I talked about this with legal and with the Board of Selectmen for quite a while, because if we go back to looking at the committee meetings that were that were put in place when they were coming up with the development of the article that was submitted at town meeting, and trying to understand what the intent of that language was. In our opinion, that intent of that language was a developer coming in, buying multiple lots, combining them, and all of a sudden you're looking at a large development that doesn't fit the neighborhood. We don't see the intent of that to prevent someone who wants to live next to their brother or son or daughter or uncle. So we'd have to look at it very carefully. We have the affidavit in there that you're not associated with a previous purchase. Being a relative for your own personal use isn't really what we feel the intent of that language was for. But we'll have to kind of look at how those proposals come in. I think it'd be really hard for the way that this is structured, where phase one is alternating lots with a staggered bid process, and then phase two is the remaining lots with a staggered bid process. It'd be really hard for someone to, I think it'd be pretty difficult for someone to end up with two lots next door and combine them and end up building something larger than what was intended. So it's a long way of saying we don't think that that language prohibits a family member from buying a lot in the same neighborhood. But if it seems like it's for the purpose of investment or development, or it kind of starts to get into that world, then that's something that we would have to consider.
Other than the 25%, 2,500, let's say 2,500 square feet building area, are there any restrictions on the buildings themselves and what's to be built? There's a maximum of 25%.
Yep.
Somebody could build 10,000 square feet, 2,000 square foot house, or 1,500 square foot house, and then 2,500 next to it. Are there any restrictions on any of the buildings?
So the question is there any other restrictions on the potential structures other than the 25% floor area ratio? And the answer to that is no, other than what is permitted through zoning. So it doesn't say you have to build 2 floors or 1 floor, or what color or what siding, or anything like that. As long as you follow the zoning and the 25% floor area ratio, it's permittable. Go ahead, Jim.
You're a successful bidder, and then the town has to do their stuff at the beginning of Castle Road on those lots. What would be the time frame of the bidder being able to break ground to start building?
As soon as they close, they can start the permitting process, right? They could start permitting even before the closing? Once they have the purchase and sale. So the question was, how soon could a winning bidder start construction? That's the question, right? Do you want to answer that?
In order to start the process, you need to have site control. And site control means you have a signed purchase and sale agreement that gives you the legal right to buy that property and develop the property. So
So as soon as you have the purchase and sale agreement signed, you can start the permitting process. Once you have your permits in place, you can break ground. I think on the zoning analysis document that we included, I think our local rule is once you obtain a permit, you have 6 months to start. Yeah. Right. You can start the permitting process after purchase and sale. You can't break ground until after you close. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for being here again. Please, if you have follow-up questions, email us at cghsale@nahant.org, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And thank you for coming tonight.